Well, here it is, the K40 Pro, my review of it. So I've had the phone now for only 4.5 days. I've got a lot of other tech on at the moment, but it's been enough time to give you what I can classify as a review, at least. I'll give you information on the battery life and all that. So you probably know what this phone is all about, and I think it's a good alternative to the Mi 11. It is, of course, an import model, the K40 Pro. So what it has going for it is a very good screen, the 120 Hz. It's a AMOLED panel, very, very bright. And as you'll see in this review, I'll give you details on the brightness of it and exactly what it's like. Good touch response rate, UFS 3.1 storage. So this model here that I have has 8 GB of RAM and 128 GB of UFS 3.1 storage. Now, apart from the 6.67-inch screen being very fast and smooth, we have the Snapdragon 888, of course, powering this, and a 4,520 mAh battery. 64 megapixel camera on the back, which does not sadly have optical image stabilization, an 8 megapixel ultra wide, and a 5 megapixel macro camera that can actually take a very decent macro shot. Along with the phone, you will find our Type A to Type C cable. That's a typical Xiaomi one. The charger, so this is 33 watts maximum. Now, it will take just under an hour to fully charge the K40 Pro. Now, I did get this one from Trading Shenzhen, and they include a power adapter for me for the EU and an OTA adapter there. So that's Type C to USB if you wanted to plug in USB pen drives or a mouse or whatever. Now in hand, the K40 Pro does feel good. We have a very fast fingerprint reader, although the animation, you can see just now when I tap it, the animation comes in a little slow, making it not look quite as fast as it really is. But this is under a second to read, and I find it is very accurate. I'm having no problems with it. Now you would have noticed with the 20 megapixel front-facing camera and the cutout that they have done well what I first saw with the Samsung Galaxy S20 SE, and it's put a golden ring around it there, which is a little bit distracting. I kind of wish they didn't do this and it wouldn't stand out so much. But hey, that's just a design choice they have made there. And, well, I don't really agree with that, and hopefully we're not going to see that on later phones. So very nice build to it. Now, the weight of it is 197 grams, and I've got easy access to that fingerprint reader, so I'm not too fussed about it not being an in-screen one. Volume up and down buttons, they do feel good. I think they're made out of metal. And we're looking at a thickness of approximately 8 millimeters. Now, if you include the camera, which does stick out a little bit, that then brings it up to almost 11 millimeters, which overall is not too bad. So it's not the lightest phone out there, but it has a solid quality build to it. This is typical Xiaomi and has been for many years now. Now, the screen does come with a pre-applied screen protector on this. That 6.67-inch AMOLED HDR10 Plus screen, 120 Hz, of course. It's very nice, and I'll get onto that shortly. So the SIM tray tool, that's not on the side here, which other manufacturers would probably put it, but it is down the bottom. And this phone does have an IP57 rating, which is new. We don't normally see this. I think it's one of the first phones of theirs to have this particular IP rating, which is great. So the SIM tray tool does have a gasket around it, of course, to keep any splashes of water out for that water IP rating, and it takes 2 nano SIMs. Now, we do have a microphone down here, Type-C port, which is still USB 2, unfortunately, no video out. I really wish they used USB 3.1 with video out support. Even if it was just cloning the displays, it doesn't have to be desktop support. And our loudspeakers, there will be a sample later on in this review of that loudspeaker. Up top, we have the secondary loudspeaker, an IR transmitter, and then another microphone used for noise cancellation in calls and also for video. So the cameras with this one, we don't have the 108 megapixel sensor like we do with the Mi 11. What we've got is a 64 megapixel one, and I believe it's the IMX582. This has an aperture of f1.9, no optical image stabilization, 5 megapixel macro camera, and an 8 megapixel ultra wide, which is really the weaker camera of all three of these. Dual tone LED flash, and right here there is a front-facing, well, rear-facing I should say, microphone, so it can pick up extra sound and do the audio zoom feature too. And this is what our phone looks like with it inside the cover. So good protection, the raised lip around that, so if you put it face down, it's not having the screen touch a table. There is a lip around where the camera module is, and of course the cutout for that fingerprint reader. It covers the buttons there, and right at the bottom, it also has a little cover over that Type-C port, which is great to stop it getting full of dust and rubbish when it's in your pocket. So we have a very nice screen in this. It is over 1000 nits of brightness. I'm measuring 950. Officially, I think it's 1300. and it's an HDR plus screen, 120 Hz, so very smooth and fluid. Now with our color scheme here, you've got all the different options, which is great, and you can set dark mode, that's there. The touch response, the edge detection is really, really good. I've had no issues with this at all. But one thing is missing that I would love to see on this display, especially in AMOLED, is DC dimming, and well, it's not there in the settings. I hope with a firmware update it could be added, DC dimming mode, because we have seen it on, for example, their Mi 11. That is there, so the Mi 11 series has it, but not with the K40 and the K40 Pro. It doesn't seem to be there, which is a slight disappointment. So those gestures trigger them really good, no problems. So very uniform color. There are no darker edges around where the cutout is, as you can see with these just sample images. And then the bottom where the chin is, you're not going to see slightly dimmer. No, it's all the same white, the same exact brightness. It states green colors, but this is black. So blacks are deep. They're excellent. Whites look good. You can adjust the white balance to your own preference. So a few questions have propped up about this particular ROM here being a Chinese ROM. So English and Chinese, that's all you get with this because this is an import version that I got from Trading Shenzhen, as I mentioned. So you can use them or other companies, of course, to import. And in the settings, it is still on Android 12, as I'll show you. And yes, you can install now at the time of this video. You can get Google services. Google Play is there. It runs just fine, no problems. But I think as apart from MIUI 12.5, when that update eventually comes, we don't know yet 100%. It could end up blocking Google Play, and that is when we will have to revert to unlocking the bootloader, which Xiaomi still lets us do. You wait the 10 days, I think it is, and then you could flash over a global ROM or the Xiaomi EU ROM for this particular model, and that will solve that problem. So at the moment, it's still fine, it's usable. Now, the performance of this ROM is excellent, really, really good. It is blazing fast, 8 gigabytes of RAM, UFS 3.1 storage. It really does show there is no lag, there is no slowdown. I'm not seeing any animation problems. The whole UI is running at a solid 120 frames per second. There are various apps, though, however, that will be running, I've noticed, not at 120 frames per second, but at 60. Apps like, say, YouTube. And I believe there's a way to force and override that to get all applications to be running. So really good performance. Notifications are all showing. Now, someone commented, is there a status LED in this? So when you plug in a cable, no. Sadly, there is no status LED within the top part here where the earpiece is, which is slightly off-centered with this phone. Now, I am, at the time of this video, on the latest ROM. I always check an update before I go out and take any photos, before I start using and testing these phones. And it's now been, well, it's day 4. This is a little bit rushed for me, but day 4 of using this phone. I think that's enough to give you an overall opinion of it. And a review, even though it's probably not, a month later review, of course, is always better. So there is a lot of bloatware that is pre-installed. A lot of it was already removed by the team at Trading Shenzhen before it was shipped out. They do some tests on it and they install Google Play for me. And they do that with most of the units and they remove some of the Chinese stuff. So you will encounter quite a bit of that you need to remove. Global ROMs have over 1.2 gigabytes and normally about 20 bloatware applications that I've counted. For example, on the Mi 11. So they do put a lot of bloat on there. Safetynet test, another question that someone asked. Yes, it does pass this. Yes, you can use your banking apps. Yes, it does have NFC. Camera 2 API, this is full level 3 support, so GCam ports. If you're into those, go and grab yourself one and you can install it and it will work. It will work fine. Find one for the K40 Pro, of course. Widevine level 1 cert, so I am a little surprised to see this, although they've started doing this now on all of their phones, and it's good to see. So yes, Amazon Prime Video, Netflix will be in full HD. That is great. GPS works very well, however, the accuracy is 3 meters. It's not going to be any better than that. It sees a lot of satellites and a very good average signal strength. All of the wireless features on this are great. So the 5G, the reception that I'm getting is very good. The speeds are great. And even our wireless that I'll get onto shortly. So that's carrier frequency 5 is there. You can see that. So it supports the dual carrier frequency with the GPS, with this chipset, the Snapdragon 888, the 888. Now, internal storage speeds, very, very good here. Look at that sequential read. That's probably faster than a lot of people's will be. SATA 3 hard drives, and even the writes are faster than SATA 3 hard drives out there. Random reads and random writes, really, really good there too. So very good performance. And this is the one that impresses me is the wireless speed. I think this is a new record for me here, getting over 1000 megabits per second. I've noticed this with the Chinese ROMs and the Chinese phones, that they tend to just really push these fast and high performance with the wireless. And this is, of course, connected up to Wi-Fi 6 to get these results. Even in the weaker spot, it still gets over 300, which is, well, it's amazing. So it's very, very quick when it comes to the wireless performance. Just like Antutu. Now, I ran into a bit of a problem here. This is the new version of Antutu off their website. And for some reason, it keeps saying that it's not verified online. Every time I tried, I ran the test twice, and the score is just crazy. Very, very high. I mean, look at the GPU score there. Wow. So take this with a pinch of salt, this result. But it will be around the 700 mark. Now, battery life. 700,000 points, that is, sorry. Battery life is the weak point of this particular phone. There had to be something. So all this performance, the great wireless performance, the great signal strength, and just running 120 hertz comes at a toll to the battery. So this fixed battery life test with the brightness configured to 200 nits, you can see the same result over all of the phones I review in my channel and compare them. That's why I do this. That you will get, realistically, an on-screen time with this phone, about 7 hours of on-screen time. So it's not amazing. Now, if you lower it down to 60 hertz, you will gain then an additional few hours of on-screen time, if that's really important to you and you don't mind running 60 hertz. Now, the charge time to go from 19% here to 100 is 41 minutes. And I did another charge that I forgot to record here, and that was from 7%, and that took about an hour to do it. It was around 59 minutes or something. So it is just under an hour to fully charge this with the fast 30-watt charging it has, which is still good. This is still very good. The battery capacity there, you can see, is 4,500 milliamp hours. Onto the audio quality. So sadly, with their flagships, we've known this now for some time, and it's never coming back, of course, is the 3.5mm headphone jack. Now, you can use a Type-C adapter, and the quality is very, very good. I always seem to rate, and it seems to always be the case, though, that Xiaomi's output for audio is excellent. One of the best, even for Type-C, and if they did have analog, it would probably be the same way. Now, these two loudspeakers, they are loud, they are good, they have a hint of bass to them, and overall I would rate them as, well, above average. These are a good 7 out of 10 or 7.5 out of 10 loudspeakers. Very loud. They're not quite as good as the Mi 11s, but that's understandable. It's a more expensive phone. Onto our gaming performance now. So PUBG, you can run the extreme frame rate setting, HDR, and you can also download and run Ultra HD too. Very, very smooth. Okay, he got him, my teammate, so that's great. Very smooth, 60 frames per second as I move around here. There's no lag, and when you look down the scope, no problems as well. Genshin Impact, so as expected, this one does run really well. Now, I set it to the medium settings with 60 frames per second option, and it is most of the time 60 frames per second. Now, occasionally, if you get up to some areas with a lot of just enemies around and magic and spells and there's fire, you will notice a quick little frame dip, but it bounces back very quick. So as expected, really, really good performance with this one. 1 hour now has passed of gaming, and I did play a little bit more PUBG than I wanted to, because Genshin Impact is definitely going to push it a lot. And we're getting up to about 45 degrees that I've seen on the front of the phone. The frame does feel quite warm. There is a bit of a hot patch where the chipset clearly is, just below where the camera module is, and that's 42 degrees. So these temperatures, they're in an ambient temperature of around about 19-20 degrees. So if you're in a warmer climate, you're using a case, do expect hotter temperatures in this. So I can see it getting up to easily 48 degrees and maybe even more. But this is cooler than the Mi 11 that I've reviewed in the channel. Over to the cameras now. So with the front-facing 20 megapixel sensor, we can only shoot 1080p, 30 frames per second, or 60 frames per second, and it does have electronic image stabilization, which does work well. Now, this quality is very good, and we do have 320 kilobit per second audio bit rate. However, we cannot shoot 4K 30, which I think is about time now that Xiaomi started to add this, at least with their flagship phones, because other flagships, the front-facing cameras can shoot 4K vlog quality, but you just simply cannot with Xiaomi. So this is 4K, rear camera can shoot 4K 30, 4K 60. We have 8K without electronic image stabilization. So this 64 megapixel sensor with an f1.9 aperture does not have any optical image stabilization, sadly. And that is just an area of cost saving from them. So if you want the optical image stabilization, well, you're going to get the Mi 11, of course, and that's probably what they want you to do. So the electronic image stabilization, it is good. Now I do see some noticeable judder coming through when panning around, especially if you do it quickly with the different exposure changes. That is when that normally happens. Now the focus is good, and overall I do like this 4K quality. It's just, if you were going to shoot a lot of low light footage, that optical image stabilization would definitely help, as you'll see with the photo samples later on. And now with the ultra wide, so this quality is not as good. It looks a little bit more washed out, less details, more noise. Sorry about that wind noise. Very windy up here at the moment. And it does have reasonably good electronic image stabilization, as you can see. And when you pan around, it doesn't tend to have too much judder because it's only 1080p, so no 4K with the ultra wide camera. We cannot swap over to the cameras at all once we start shooting. And this is 8K footage, so with this we don't have any electronic image stabilization, so really you need a gimbal. It is 30 frames per second, but it's AI 8K, which really is just 6K upscaled to 8K. As I walk ahead, you'll see it shakes around, so that is why you need a tripod or a gimbal to get nice footage if you plan on moving about. And so we do have 1080p 60 with electronic image stabilization, but you're looking at it only at 30 frames per second, of course, because my timeline and all my videos are 30 frames per second, not 60. But it is smooth electronic image stabilization. It isn't the best I have seen because there also is no optical image stabilization. The focus is okay, and overall quality is good. I do like that 320 kilobits per second audio that we have with this. Vera, say hi. She's off on her adventures exploring the bush and forest around us. Okay, so those camera samples were going to be a lot more different from me. I ran into a bit of a problem that was my own fault. I ended up having to factory reset this phone, and that's to do with the password. I put a password on this that I somehow messed up and I couldn't remember it. So I had to format the whole phone. That was a bit of a disaster because I spent a whole morning taking photos all around town, like I often do with my reviews. And then I went at nighttime down and took some nighttime photos. So that's why they were just around this area. And I managed to save 4 samples only though from those photos I took. Anyway, enough of that, my little problems here with reviews. It's normal. So that's got really good performance on this. It's so fast. The UFS 3.1 storage, Snapdragon 888. The wireless performance is the new record setter for me. Just the raw throughput from this, the transfer's so good. And even 5G reception, great. Call quality is very good. And the screen, great. Super bright. I mean, really bright. So it's about 1300 nits. So I'm measuring, well, 920 or so, but still, I believe it can go and do the 1300 or at least well over 1000 nits. A bright, great screen, so responsive. The whole UI is so fast and fluid with this model. But there are a lot of things to take into consideration with this particular model here. One of the big ones is that MIUI 12.5 is coming, and they did say officially, Xiaomi, I don't know whether they're going to change on this though, that they will be blocking with the Chinese versions, the domestic versions, Google support. So that means no Google Framework, no Google Play Store. You're going to need to then install one of those Xiaomi EU ROMs. So the bootloader's unlocked, you can do that, you can flash over the ROM, so there's a workaround for it, but it's still a bit of an annoyance there. Being a Chinese ROM, you get a lot of Chinese bloatware, you need to uninstall it, you sometimes get some notifications come through, and I did have a few minor little issues with some of the notifications for like WhatsApp. You need to make sure you set up auto start of apps in the permissions. All of the permissions need to be given to the app, and then it should pull through those notifications without you having to wonder, hey, where are my WhatsApp messages? You go into the app and then suddenly you get 100 new messages come through, which is a minor annoyance there. So very good performance. What about the camera? Well, 108 megapixels isn't here, and they want you to get, of course, the Mi 11 or other models. Now, if you're really into your cameras and you want a really good screen, I recommend the Redmi Note 10 Pro, okay? That's a very good one. And if you're a gamer and you're on a budget, what about then the POCO F3? The POCO F3 is, well, it's this, but the non-pro version. It's the K40. So the POCO F3, I will be reviewing that one in the channel, so do subscribe for that. And that'll be for the gamers out there. Snapdragon 870, very good price point. The same screen, the same fast refresh rate, and UFS 3.1 storage. So very good phone, and I hope to have that soon for you all to see. So thank you so much for watching my review here of the K40 Pro. It is a good phone. Oh, and I almost forgot, battery life. Battery life on this is nothing amazing at 120 Hertz. You're looking around 7 hours of on-screen time. Realistically, if you lower it down to 60 Hertz, then you may be able to scrape 8 to 9 hours. So it's not a battery champion, unfortunately. Other models like, say, the Redmi Note 10 Pro can do a little bit better. And the Mi 10T is another one that's very good on the battery if you're interested in that. So I do hope to catch you in my up-and-coming reviews.